Perez Hilton here, and you have the Jesuits to thank for me. That's right. If you did not know it, I went to an all-boy Jesuit school in Miami for 7 years before I went to NYU and was able to be my true self. That is a former Catholic now. But as a former Catholic who received a very strict Catholic education, I know not just the optics of the Pope, but I know who he really is. According to the Bible, Catholicism views the Pope as the spokesperson for God. The Pope is in direct communication with God, according to Catholicism. So when the Pope says something, it is not the Pope speaking. It is on behalf of God. I could be remembering that wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm like 95% sure I'm right. Well, the Pope just sent a letter to U.S. Catholic bishops roasting Taylor Swift's nemesis. In summary, Donald Trump's immigration policy is ungodly. It is not Christian-like. God does not approve of Donald Trump's immigration policy and immigration practices. And he also addressed not just the Catholic bishops, but also Catholics in the United States. The Pope, the spokesperson for God in direct communication with God, says that it is important for Catholics to disagree with any measure that identifies the illegal status of some migrants with criminality. You know what that means? If you disagree with the Pope, you're a bad Catholic. You know it. You're not in good standing with the Catholic Church if you disagree with the Pope. The Pope also said that deporting people who in many cases have left their own land for reasons of extreme poverty, exploitation, and persecution, quote, damages the dignity of many men and women and of entire families and places them in a state of particular vulnerability and defenselessness. The letter also scolds Trump's vice president, whom he did not endorse or throw support behind this week as his possible successor, of JD Vance. Pope Francis alluded to the vice president and his rationalization of Trump's immigration policy and practices. The vice president says that people should care for their family, communities, and country before caring for others. The Pope wrote that instead, people should meditate on love that builds a fraternity open to all, without exception. Quote, Christian love is not concentric expansion of interests that little by little extend to other persons and groups. The Pope is the second Catholic leader to criticize JD Vance, who is a Catholic. After Vance accused the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops of resettling immigrants to receive federal funding, New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan called the vice president's remarks scurrilous and nasty. Quote, you want to come look at our audits, which are scrupulously done? You think we make money caring for the immigrants? We're losing it hand over fist. We're not in a money-making business. That is New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan. The Pope himself adds, the journey from slavery to freedom that the people of Israel traveled invites us to look at the reality of our time, so clearly marked by the phenomenon of migration. Jesus Christ, Loving everyone with a universal love educates us in the permanent recognition of the dignity of every human being without exception. I have followed closely the major crisis that is taking place in the United States with the initiation of a program of mass deportations. The rightly formed conscience cannot fail to make a critical judgment and express its disagreement with any measure that tacitly or explicitly identifies the illegal status of some migrants with criminality. At the same time, one must recognize the right of a nation to defend itself and keep communities safe from those who have committed violent or serious crimes while in the country or prior to arrival. That said, the act of deporting people who in many cases have left their own land for reasons of extreme poverty, insecurity, exploitation, persecution, or serious deterioration of the environment damages the dignity of many men and women and of entire families and places them in a state of particular vulnerability and defenselessness. Christians know very well that it is only by affirming the infinite dignity of all that our own identity as persons and as communities reaches its maturity. Christian love is not a concentric expansion of interests, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I exhort the faithful of the Catholic Church and all men and women of goodwill not to give in to narratives that discriminate against and cause unnecessary suffering to our migrant and refugee brothers and sisters. With charity and clarity, we are all called to live in solidarity and fraternity, to build bridges that bring us even closer together, to avoid walls of ignominy, and to learn to give our lives as Jesus Christ gave his for the salvation of all. Then he asks Our Lady of Guadalupe to protect and blah, 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 blah. For his part, the apprentice alum has not responded yet to the Pope. Neither has Catholic VP JD Vance, but newly appointed border czar by Donald Trump, Tom Homan, has responded to the Pope, and some might say that his retort is a bit snippy. The border czar says, I've got harsh words for the Pope. I say this as a lifelong Catholic. He ought to focus on his work and leave enforcement to us. He's got a wall around the Vatican, does he not? I wish he'd stick to the Catholic Church and fix that and leave border enforcement to us. Well, all of you Catholics especially, you can't say the Pope is wrong. This is a bad Catholic. Or can you criticize the Pope? The Pope is speaking for Jesus, for God. Well, both, because God and Jesus are the same. I remember the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. The Pope was in touch with all three. Hello. Oh, wow. This is pretty major, I think. What are your thoughts on this all? Let me know in the comment section.